The controlled chaos of Chicago O'Hare International Airport on a crisp autumn afternoon was a familiar symphony to 17-year-old twins, Jasmine and Isabel Jordan. They moved through the bustling terminal with the quiet, unassuming confidence that came from a lifetime spent navigating the peripheries of a global spotlight. Dressed in the navy blue blazers of the prestigious Chicago Lakeshore Academy, they were indistinguishable from other students heading off for an educational trip. Save for the subtle athletic grace in their stride and the unmistakable intensity in their eyes, a direct inheritance from their father. Their first-class boarding passes for Monarch Air's Flight 72 to Paris were clutched in their hands. It was a trip they had meticulously planned for months, a chance to attend Paris Fashion Week as part of an advanced design program offered by their school. For Jasmine, an aspiring designer with sketchbooks full of innovative sneaker concepts, it was a dream. For Isabel, a gifted photographer with an eye for capturing the intersection of sport and culture, it was a vital opportunity to build her portfolio. Their father, Michael Jordan, had finally agreed to let them travel internationally alone. It was a milestone, a testament to the trust he placed in the intelligent, grounded young women he had raised. The first-class tickets weren't a flex. They were a practical matter. He wanted to ensure his daughters would be safe, comfortable, and well-rested for their demanding schedule. It was a simple, protective gesture from a father to his children. They approached the Monarch Air Premier check-in counter, their excitement a low hum beneath their composed exteriors. Their printed boarding passes clearly showed seat assignments 1A and 1B. Their academy IDs were pristine. They were legitimate passengers with legitimate business. The agent, whose name tag read Damian Finch, looked up from his computer. He was a man who seemed to take a grim satisfaction in the small dominions of his authority. When his eyes landed on the two black teenagers standing before him, a subtle but immediate shift occurred in his demeanor. The practiced, professional smile he'd given the white family ahead of them evaporated, replaced by a strained, condescending watchfulness. "Passports and tickets," he clipped, his voice several degrees cooler. Jasmine placed their documents on the polished counter. "Good afternoon. We're checking in for the flight to Paris." Damian picked up the boarding passes, his eyebrows arching theatrically as he registered the first-class cabin. He held them up to the light as if they were suspected forgeries, turning them over and rubbing the cardstock between his thumb and forefinger. The scrutiny was so overt it was performative. "Where did you get these?" he asked, his voice loud enough for the passengers in the adjacent line to turn and stare. The implication was as clear as it was ugly. Isabel's jaw tightened, but her voice, when she spoke, was perfectly level. "Our father booked them for us on the Monarch Air website. Is there an issue?" "I'll be the judge of that," Damian sneered. "There are all sorts of scams these days. I need to verify these." He swept up their passports and tickets and disappeared into a back office, leaving them standing at the counter like statues. For nearly 20 minutes, they endured the silent judgment of the queue. They could feel the weight of the stares, hear the whispered asides, and sense the toxic assumptions being baked in the heat of the moment. Two black girls, clearly in over their heads, trying to scam their way into luxury. The smirks and knowing glances from other passengers felt like tiny paper cuts. When Damian finally reappeared, his face wore a mask of smug vindication. He slapped two new boarding passes onto the counter. "Just as I thought. There was a system glitch with your booking," he announced with false authority. "We were able to get you onto the flight, though. You've been reassigned to Economy Plus, Gates 42. Jasmine looked at the new seats, 38E and 38F. "These aren't the seats we have confirmed. Our original booking is for first class." Damian leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "Listen, I don't know what kind of hustle you're running, but you should learn that some things are for certain people. You should be happy you're getting on the plane at all." The phrase, "certain people," hung in the air, thick and suffocating. There was no mistaking its meaning. Isabel's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but Jasmine placed a calming hand on her sister's arm. They had been raised in the shadow of the world's most famous athlete, and had been coached their entire lives by their parents on how to handle prejudice. Grace under pressure wasn't just a motto, it was a survival mechanism. Righteous anger, they knew, was a weapon easily turned against them. "We'd like to speak to your supervisor," Jasmine said, her voice unwavering. Damien's smile turned predatory. "Supervisor's in a meeting. If you've got a problem with your seats, take it up at the gate. Next." Humiliated and seething, the twins collected their new boarding passes and walked away. The stares followed them, a mixture of pity and the smug satisfaction of people whose biases had been confirmed. "We have to call Dad," Isabel whispered fiercely. "No," Jasmine said, her resolve firm. "He's in that big quarterly meeting with the Nike board. He specifically said not to call unless it was a life-or-death emergency." "This feels pretty close," Isabel countered. "We handle it ourselves," Jasmine insisted, though a flicker of doubt entered her own mind. "Let's just get through security." They were unaware that Damien Finch was already on the phone with the TSA, flagging them as suspicious individuals attempting to use fraudulent tickets, adding a layer of official venom to his personal prejudice. The discrimination they had just endured was not an isolated incident. It was the opening salvo in a coordinated assault on their dignity. What was about to happen next would test every lesson their father had ever taught them about strength, resilience, and the true nature of power. The TSA security checkpoint should have been a routine, if tedious, process. Jasmine and Isabel were seasoned travelers who knew the drill. But as they approached the screening lanes, they felt a familiar, chilling pattern emerge. White passengers were sailing through with cursory checks, while travelers of color were being disproportionately directed to secondary screening. "Random additional screening," announced Agent Brenda Riley, her eyes having tracked the twins with predatory focus from the moment they entered the queue. There was nothing random about it. They were herded into a separate lane, their meticulously packed carry-on bags unceremoniously dumped onto a cold, steel table for a full manual inspection. Agent Riley's hands were rough and dismissive as she rifled through their belongings. She pulled out a pair of rare, custom-designed sneakers from Jasmine's bag, a prototype for her design portfolio. "What are these? Worth a lot of money, are they?" Riley asked, her tone dripping with insinuation. "They're for a school project," Jasmine replied calmly, refusing to take the bait. The agent's suspicion only deepened when she unearthed Isabel's high-end camera equipment. "Lot of expensive gear here," she muttered, examining each lens with exaggerated care. She then turned to Jasmine's tablet, powering it on without consent. "Let's see what we've got on here." "That's my personal tablet. It has my schoolwork and design files on it," Jasmine protested, her voice still measured. "If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about," Riley retorted, illegally scrolling through private files. "Fashion designs, huh? You some kind of big-shot designer?" The question was laced with derision, a clear disbelief that a young black girl could be involved in such a world. The enhanced pat-down that followed was even more degrading. The agent's hands were invasive, their comments about the girl's braided hair and athletic builds loud enough for everyone to hear. "Gotta be thorough with these athletic types," Riley said to a colleague, winking. "You never know what they're hiding." A businessman standing nearby, clearly disturbed by the blatant harassment, discreetly pulled out his phone to record. He was immediately intercepted by another agent. "No recording in the security area, sir. Please delete that footage." The only potential witness was silenced. By the time they were finally cleared, nearly an hour had passed. Their belongings were carelessly shoved back into their bags, and they were now perilously close to their boarding time. "Have a nice flight," Agent Riley called after them with a saccharine sweet smile. "Better hurry. Monarch is very strict about their boarding times." As they rushed through the concourse, the earlier excitement of their trip had curdled into a cold dread. They decided to skip a proper meal and head straight to the gate, but first tried to access the Monarch Air Royal Lounge to grab a quick bottle of water and compose themselves. At the lounge entrance, the attendant, a man named Tristan Vance, gave them a look of undisguised contempt. "Can I help you?" he asked, making no move to welcome them. "We were just hoping to come in for a moment," Isabel said, gesturing with their economy plus boarding passes. Tristan made a show of consulting his computer. "I'm sorry, the lounge is at full capacity," he said, his voice flat and dismissive. Jasmine glanced past him into the lounge, where dozens of empty leather armchairs were clearly visible. But there are plenty of open seats right there. Those are reserved for our global services members, he lied smoothly. There is a waiting list. Just then, a white couple walked up. Tristan's entire demeanor transformed. Welcome. He beamed. Right this way. He ushered them past the twins and into the lounge without so much as glancing at their boarding passes. Excuse me, Jasmine called out, her patience finally fracturing. We were here first. You just said you were full. Tristan turned, his face a mask of annoyance. Is there a problem here? Suddenly, a lounge manager, a severe-looking woman named Sharon Miller, appeared at his side. But before she could speak, a Latina server named Maria Flores, who had been watching the interaction with a pained expression, hurried over. Ma'am, I can find a spot for them in my section, Maria offered, looking at Sharon. Stay out of this, Maria, Sharon snapped, not even looking at her. She then turned her full attention to the twins, her expression hardening. The lounge is reserved for our premium passengers. If you continue to cause a disruption, I will have to call security. The threat was implicit. Know your place, or we will put you in it. Defeated, they turned to leave. But as they did, Maria discreetly pressed a business card into Isabel's hand. On the back she had scribbled, He does this all the time. My name is Maria. I saw everything. It was a tiny act of solidarity, a flicker of light in a rapidly darkening day. They finally reached Gate C42, their humiliation now a palpable weight. They approached the customer service desk, hoping for a final chance at resolution before boarding. The agent, Eliza Gable, barely looked up as Jasmine explained the situation, presenting her original booking confirmation email from her phone. The check-in agent already adjusted your booking, Eliza said dismissively, her eyes glued to her screen. First class is completely full. There's nothing to be done. It was a lie. A quick glance at the seating chart on her own monitor would have shown several open first-class seats. Sienna began to record the interaction with her phone. Eliza immediately became hostile. You can't record here. Put that phone away, or I'm calling security. We're documenting this customer service failure for a formal complaint, Jasmine stated, her voice like ice. As the general boarding call began, they resigned themselves to their fate. All they wanted now was to get to Paris. But the gate agent scanning the passes, Martin Cole, had been briefed by his colleagues. When the twins reached him, he made a grand spectacle of examining their passes. Hold on, he announced loudly. These passes have been flagged. They appear to have been altered. That's absurd, Isabel said. Your airline issued them to us less than 2 hours ago. I'm going to need to see some government-issued photo ID, Martin demanded, knowing full well that at 17, they likely only had school identification. We're 17, Jasmine explained through gritted teeth. We have our official academy IDs, which the airline confirmed were acceptable for international travel when the tickets were purchased. Martin reached for his radio. Security to Gate C42. We have a possible security situation. The announcement galvanized the waiting area. Phones came out, and a murmur of alarm spread through the crowd. This is blatant discrimination, Isabel said, her voice ringing with conviction. You are targeting us because we are black. That's a very serious accusation, Martin said, his face flushing. Making false claims against airline personnel is a federal offense. Before the situation could spiral further, a new figure arrived. It was the lounge manager, Sharon Miller, now acting as the gate supervisor. For a fleeting moment, the twins felt a surge of hope. Surely, as a black woman in a position of authority, she would see the injustice for what it was. They could not have been more wrong. Sharon Miller had spent 2 decades navigating the treacherous corporate culture of Monarch Air. She had learned that to survive and to advance, one did not make waves. She had become an enforcer of the very system that marginalized people who looked just like her, a gatekeeper who had internalized the rules of the oppressor. What's the problem here? She asked, her tone already siding with her staff. These two are making baseless accusations of racism, Martin explained, deliberately mischaracterizing the entire event. I was simply following enhanced security protocols. Sharon examined their IDs and boarding passes with the same exaggerated suspicion as all the others. She looked at Jasmine and Isabel not as customers, but as troublemakers. Is there a reason you two can't simply follow the rules like everyone else? She asked, her voice dripping with disapproval. The betrayal was a physical shock, more painful than any of the overt racism they had endured. Here was someone who should have been an ally, who should have understood the coded language and the systemic bias, and she was instead validating it. Humiliated, exhausted, and running out of time, they finally conceded. But as they walked down the jet bridge, they had no idea that one final, decisive confrontation awaited them. A confrontation that would bring America's largest airline to its knees. Standing at the aircraft door was the flight's purser, Leo Petrov, who was examining the passenger manifest with a frown. As they approached, he stepped forward, physically blocking their path. "Hold it," he said. "I've got a note here about your seats. There's been a last-minute equipment change. This row is now reserved for crew rest. I'm afraid we have no other seats available on this flight. You'll have to be rebooked." It was the most audacious lie of all. They were being denied boarding altogether. Jasmine's patience, worn away by 1,000 tiny cuts, finally snapped. The calm, composed demeanor vanished, replaced by a cold, hard fury. "There's no equipment change," she said, her voice clear and cutting. "We've been harassed, lied to, and discriminated against by every single Monarch employee we have encountered today, and we are done." Leo Petrov, accustomed to unquestioning compliance, was taken aback by her directness. "That's it," he snarled, reaching for the intercom phone. "Security to the jet bridge. Passenger removal." But Jasmine was already pulling out her own phone. With the calm precision of a surgeon, she found the number she needed. "We're calling our father," she announced. Her voice wasn't pleading or angry. It was a statement of fact, delivered with an authority that was so absolute, so chillingly certain, that everyone Leo, the flight attendants, the passengers craning their necks froze. Leo's hand hovered over the phone. For the first time all day, he looked uncertain. He had a sudden, terrible feeling that he had just made a catastrophic mistake. "Dad," Jasmine said as the call connected. She thumbed the speakerphone button, and a voice, perhaps the most recognized voice on the planet, filled the silent jet bridge. A voice of pure, unadulterated legend. "Jas, sweetheart, what's going on? You okay?" The sound of Michael Jordan's voice, calm and familiar, echoed through the confined space of the jet bridge. It was a voice known to billions, a voice that had narrated championships and sold billions of dollars in merchandise. On the speakerphone, it carried an unmistakable weight of authority that transcended celebrity. Leo Petrov's face went slack, the color draining from it as if a plug had been pulled. The security guards who had just arrived, their postures aggressive and ready for confrontation, stopped dead in their tracks. Passengers who had been boarding behind the twins pushed closer, their phones held aloft, sensing they were witnessing a moment of profound, paradigm-shifting significance. "We're here at O'Hare, Dad," Jasmine said, her own voice regaining its composure, drawing strength from his. "We're on the jet bridge for Monarch Air Flight 72. They're refusing to let us on the plane." "They're what?" The calm in Michael's voice was replaced by a harder edge, a cold fury simmering just beneath the surface. "Put the person in charge on the phone." Jasmine held the phone out toward the purser. Leo stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. "Sir, my name is Leo Petrov. I'm the purser for this flight. There seems to have been a misunderstanding with the young lady's seating assignment." "Misunderstanding?" Michael's voice cut through the stammered excuse like a shard of glass. "Mr. Petrov, my daughters have first-class tickets, purchased and paid for. I have the confirmation right here. I'm looking at it. Seats 1A and 1B. I understand they're currently holding boarding passes for economy, and that you are now attempting to remove them from my airline entirely. Is that correct?" The phrase, "my airline," hung in the air. The staff exchanged confused, panicked glances. They didn't know that Michael Jordan, as part of his massive, multi-year endorsement and branding deal, was not just a spokesperson for Monarch Air. He was a major shareholder and held a non-executive seat on the board. He had a vested, personal, and financial stake in the company that was at that moment systematically humiliating his children. "Sir, there was an overbooking situation," Leo began, his voice trembling. "Was there?" Michael's tone was dangerously quiet. "Or did your check-in agent, Damien Finch, decide my daughters didn't look the part? Did your TSA-affiliated agents, Brenda Riley and her colleagues, decide to harass them based on their appearance? Did your lounge manager, Sharon Miller, deny them entry to a half-empty room? Did your gate agent, Martin Cole, create a false security alert? Because I have a funny feeling that's what happened, Mr. Petrov. And my funny feelings, they tend to be very, very accurate." The blood drained completely from Leo's face. Jordan knew their names. He had been tracking the situation. The realization dawned on them all. This wasn't just a phone call from an angry parent. This was an audit, a reckoning. "Dad, what do we do?" Isabel asked, her voice a mixture of awe and apprehension. "You stay right where you are, sweetheart," Michael commanded. "Don't move, and keep that phone recording. Now, Mr. Petrov, listen to me very carefully. You have exactly 2 minutes to escort my daughters to their assigned first-class seats. You will then have every single employee who interacted with them today line up on this jet bridge and offer a personal, sincere apology. And then we're going to have a much longer conversation about your future employment." Leo, desperate to de-escalate, sputtered, "Sir, I don't have the authority." "You're right," Michael said, his voice dropping to an Arctic calm. "You don't. So I'm going to have to go over your head." There was a brief pause, the sound of another call being conferenced in. A new voice, harried and panicked, joined the line. "Michael, this is Markham Hayes. What in God's name is going on? My phone is blowing up." It was the CEO of Monarch Air. "Markham," Jordan said, his voice now devoid of any warmth, "I'm at a Nike board meeting, and I've had to step out because your staff at O'Hare are racially profiling and harassing my daughters. They are currently being blocked from boarding a flight that I practically own, so here's what's going to happen. I am invoking Section 12 of my contract, the morality clause. You have just breached it. My multi-$100 million deal with you is, as of this second, suspended. But we're not going to stop there." Another click. A third voice joined the call. This one gruff and official. "Jordan, you better have a good reason for calling me out of a city council briefing." It was the mayor of Chicago. "I do," Michael replied. "There is an ongoing, credible security threat at O'Hare's International Terminal, being perpetrated by the staff of Monarch Air. They are creating a public disturbance, fabricating security alerts, and harassing minors. I am formally requesting that you shut down all operations at Terminal 5 until the situation is contained and the safety of all passengers, including my children, can be guaranteed." A collective gasp went through the jet bridge. This was no longer about an airline complaint. It was a multi-pronged assault, executed with the ruthless precision of a championship-winning final play. Markham Hayes, the CEO, his voice now pleading, broke in, "Michael, for God's sake, let's be reasonable. We can handle this internally. We don't need to shut down the airport. Reason left the building the moment your agent decided my kids were certain people who didn't belong in first class." Michael shot back. "You had your chance to handle it. Now I'm handling it." Suddenly, a new sound cut through the tension. The piercing, unmistakable wail of airport security alarms began to blare throughout the terminal. A computerized voice, devoid of emotion, echoed from the terminal speakers. "Attention! A security incident has been declared at Terminal 5. All flight operations are suspended. Passengers are to return to the main terminal. All aircraft are to hold position or return to the gate." The shutdown was real. Michael Jordan had not just made a complaint. He had, with a few phone calls, paralyzed one of the world's busiest airports. On the jet bridge, Leo Petrov looked as if he might collapse. The security guards were already backing away, wanting no part of the corporate mushroom cloud that was about to form. The other passengers, who had been watching the drama unfold with a mixture of shock and glee, were now looking around in stunned disbelief. They had just witnessed a single individual wield a level of power so immense, so absolute, that it could bring the machinery of modern travel to a screeching halt. Through the phone, Michael's voice returned, now directed only at his daughters, gentle once more. "Jasmine, Isabel, you stay put. People are coming for you. Good people. They're going to take care of you." His voice hardened again as he addressed the cowering airline employees. "As for the rest of you, you wanted to make a scene. Congratulations, you're now the stars of the show." In the mahogany-paneled boardroom of Monarch Air's corporate headquarters, the emergency meeting was already underway. The company's largest institutional investor, a ruthless financier named Silas Croft, stared at the live feed of O'Hare's grounded terminal, his face a mask of cold fury. "He's holding a public company hostage," Croft thundered, slamming his fist on the table. "This is an abuse of power, Markham. That Jordan deal was a mistake from day one. We've made a celebrity our master." Silas Croft had been the lone dissenting voice against the massive endorsement deal with Michael Jordan. He viewed it as a fiscally irresponsible capitulation to celebrity culture. Now, Jordan had handed him the perfect crisis to prove his point and reassert his own control over the board. "We are losing tens of millions of dollars with every hour this terminal is shut down," Croft continued, his voice ringing with authority. "We need to control the narrative, now." He turned to Jenna Slate, the airline's sharp, ambitious VP of Public Relations. "Jenna, I want a story leaked within the hour. Entitled, 'Celebrity Children Cause Security Scare at O'Hare.' Frame them as spoiled brats who threw a tantrum when they didn't get their way. Emphasize the disruption they've caused to thousands of ordinary travelers. We paint them as the villains." Jenna nodded, already typing furiously into her phone. Croft then swiveled his attention to Kenji Tanaka, the head of the IT department, who was conferenced in via video. "Kenji, I need a complete system wipe of all records related to this incident. Security footage from the check-in counter, the TSA checkpoint, the lounge, the gate, all of it. Erase every trace of the employees' interactions with the Jordan girls. If anyone asks, it was a server malfunction, a catastrophic data loss. Do you understand?" Kenji hesitated. "Sir, that would be destroying evidence. If this becomes a legal matter..." "This is a matter of corporate survival," Croft snapped. "The board will indemnify you. Just make it disappear." While Croft was orchestrating his counter-offensive, the twins, still standing on the now empty jet bridge, were executing their own strategy. Guided by their father over the phone, they were no longer just victims. They were now the primary documentarians of their own case. Isabel, a social media prodigy, was already live on Instagram, her phone capturing the surreal scene of the silent terminal and the panicked faces of the airline staff. The stream was titled, "Monarch Air Shut Down O'Hare Over This." Within minutes, tens of thousands of people were watching. The hashtag, Monarch Meltdown, was born. "Tell them everything," Michael's voice urged through the phone. "From the beginning. Name every name." And they did. Calmly and articulately, Jasmine and Isabel recounted every microaggression, every lie, every humiliation. Their poise and intelligence stood in stark contrast to the narrative of spoiled, disruptive teenagers that Jenna Slate was desperately trying to seed to her media contacts. The digital battle had been joined. As Jenna's PR team pushed their false narrative, a tidal wave of authentic, real-time evidence was flooding the internet. Other passengers who had recorded the various confrontations began uploading their footage, tagging the twins and using the Monarch Meltdown hashtag. Then came a crucial blow to Croft's plan. Maria Flores, the compassionate lounge attendant, saw Isabel's live stream. She immediately emailed the contact information Isabel had been given. Attached to the email was the lounge's internal security footage from that afternoon, which she had downloaded onto a thumb drive. It clearly showed Tristan Vance lying to the twins about the lounge being full and then admitting the white couple. She titled the email, "The Truth." In the IT department, Kenji Tanaka sat staring at his monitor, Silas Croft's order echoing in his ears. Kenji was a second-generation Japanese-American whose father had been a lifelong Bulls fan. Michael Jordan wasn't just a celebrity to him, he was a hero, a symbol of excellence and grace under pressure. The thought of erasing evidence to protect a pack of racist employees and a cynical corporate bully like Croft made him physically ill. He made his decision. Instead of initiating the deletion protocols, he began a deep archival process, backing up every single file, the check-in records, the TSA flag, the internal communications between the staff to a secure, encrypted cloud server that he alone controlled. He then sent an anonymous, encrypted message to the general counsel of the Jordan brand with a single sentence: "I have all the evidence. It's safe." Silas Croft's carefully orchestrated cover-up was not just failing, it was backfiring in spectacular fashion. The authentic, crowd-sourced evidence from witnesses and allies was drowning out the corporate spin. The public wasn't seeing two entitled brats. They were seeing two poised young women being systematically targeted, and an American icon refusing to let it stand. The battle for Monarch Air was about to enter its endgame. The emergency board meeting of Monarch Air reconvened with a new, unexpected attendee. Michael Jordan's face appeared on the main screen, not from a corporate office, but from his private jet, already taxiing on a runway at a private airfield. He wasn't just a voice on the phone anymore. He was a face, and his expression was one of cold, implacable resolve. "Silas," Michael began, his voice devoid of any pleasantries, addressing the investor directly. "I understand you've been busy, trying to paint my teenage daughters as delinquents, trying to erase evidence of the discrimination they faced. How's that working out for you?" Silas Croft, though momentarily stunned, recovered quickly. "Michael, your grandstanding has already cost this company's shareholders over $50 million. You have abused your position, and I will be leading a vote for your immediate removal from this board and the voiding of your endorsement contract for cause." Michael almost smiled. It was a chilling sight. "A vote? That's a great idea. But I think we should have all the facts on the table first." He nodded to someone off-screen. A moment later, every board member's private screen lit up with a stream of documents, videos, and audio files. It was Kenji Tanaka's entire archive. They saw the check-in footage of Damian Finch's sneering condescension. They saw the TSA footage of the humiliating search. They saw the pristine, undeniable video from the Royal Lounge. They heard audio recordings from airport staff communications, filled with racist jokes and derogatory comments about the Jordan girls. And then came the final, devastating piece of evidence, a recording of Silas Croft's call with Kenji, in which he explicitly ordered the destruction of evidence. The boardroom fell into a stunned silence. The narrative had been irrevocably shattered. This wasn't an overreaction from a celebrity. It was a meticulously documented case of systemic racism and a high-level corporate cover-up. "This company has a disease, Markham," Michael said, his eyes locking on the CEO. "A disease you have allowed to fester. Today, we begin the cure." He looked back at Croft. "As for your vote, Silas, you may want to hold that thought. You see, while you were trying to smear my children, I was making a few more phone calls." He continued, "I've just spent the last hour on the phone with a consortium of investors, fellow athletes, entertainers, business leaders who believe that dignity isn't a negotiable part of the customer experience. This morning, Monarch Air had a market cap of $3 billion. As of a few minutes ago, thanks to your little PR disaster, it's closer to 2. My consortium has just purchased a 35% stake in this company on the open market. We are now the largest single shareholding block. So this isn't just a board meeting anymore." Michael leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping to a powerful whisper. "This is a hostile takeover, and I'm the new boss." The shock in the room was palpable. Silas Croft looked as though he had been physically struck. "My first act, as the controlling shareholder, will be to accept the resignations of Mr. Croft and any other board member or executive who was aware of this toxic culture and did nothing," Jordan declared. "My second will be to fire every single employee who harassed my daughters, from the check-in desk to the jet bridge." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "But we're not just going to punish. We're going to rebuild. We are establishing a new standard of service at this airline. We're calling it the Jordan Standard. It means every single passenger, from every background, in every class of ticket, is treated with the same level of respect and dignity. Period. We're going to rip out every training manual and start over, with curriculum designed and led by civil rights experts. And a significant portion of this airline's profits will now be diverted to a new foundation dedicated to fighting for social and racial justice." He looked around at the stunned faces on the screen. Monarch Air is going to become a model for corporate responsibility. It will become the airline that stands for something more than just profit. It will stand for equality. And if anyone on this board has a problem with that, your buyout package is already prepared. No one spoke. There were no objections. The coup was complete. "The shutdown at O'Hare will be lifted in 5 minutes, Michael concluded. "My daughters will be escorted onto that plane and seated in first class. And when they land in Paris, they will be greeted by the new head of European operations for the airline that their father now owns. Any questions?" There were none. The reckoning was over. The transformation was just beginning. 6 months later, Monarch Air was an airline reborn. The Jordan Standard was not just a marketing slogan, it was a fundamental, operational reality. The transformation had been swift, comprehensive, and broadcast to the world. Damien Finch, Brenda Riley, and the others involved in the incident were not just fired. Their cases became the centerpiece of the new mandatory training program for all 40 Monarch employees. Their actions were dissected, not to shame them as individuals, but to illustrate the insidious nature of unconscious bias and systemic prejudice. Sharon Miller, the supervisor who had sided with the system, underwent a profound personal transformation. After weeks of intensive counseling and education, she requested to be part of the solution. She now co-chaired the new Independent Civilian Oversight Board, using her insider's knowledge to help dismantle the very culture she had once enabled. Silas Croft was gone, a pariah in the financial world. Kenji Tanaka was the new Chief Technology Officer, his integrity rewarded with immense responsibility. Maria Flores was promoted to Director of In-Lounge Experience, tasked with ensuring every Monarch lounge was a true sanctuary of respect. The airline, once hemorrhaging value, was now more profitable than ever. Corporations and individuals, inspired by the public stand for equality, flocked to fly with them. The Jordan brand's partnership was reinstated, but now it was a partnership with a purpose, funding educational programs and community initiatives in every city Monarch served. Jasmine and Isabel Jordan had become reluctant but powerful icons of a new generation of activism. They used their platform not for fame, but to advocate for systemic change, speaking at schools and youth conferences about the power of speaking truth to power. Their trip to Paris had been rescheduled. As they walked through the gleaming, revitalized Monarch Air Terminal at O'Hare, the atmosphere was entirely different. The staff was diverse, their smiles genuine. The check-in process was seamless. As they settled into their first-class seats, 1A and 1B, the flight's purser, a young, earnest woman, came to their seat. "Miss Jasmine, Miss Isabel," she said, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "On behalf of the entire Monarch family, I want to welcome you aboard. We are honored to have you fly with us today. Your father has taught us all a new way to fly." As the plane ascended, Isabel looked out the window at the city of Chicago shrinking below. "Do you think he knew it would go this far?" she asked her sister. Jasmine smiled. "He's Michael Jordan. He doesn't play for second place." Their story had become a modern legend. The phone call that shut down an airport had done more than that. It had launched a revolution in corporate America. It had proven that power, when wielded with moral clarity, could bend the arc of the universe toward justice. And it all started because two intelligent young women, armed with the truth and the love of their father, refused to accept that they belonged anywhere but exactly where they were supposed to be.